Hello, Facebook viewers. Thanks for joining us at Henry Schein Chats. We're going to be talking about human resources today. I'm joined here with Adrienne Twigg, who is the co-owner of Bent Erickson and Associates, an HR company. And I'm just delighted to talk to you about this very important subject that is so often misunderstood inside dental practices. It seems to me that while the business is humming along, oftentimes the doctor, the producer, forgets about the importance of their team. And so I'd really like your perspective on the current climate of the industry relative to HR policy, and also some of the things that you see in practices that doctors often overlook or maybe aren't thinking about, that you know that from an HR perspective they really need to be mindful of, but also how they might be able to mitigate some of their risk.
Well, obviously this climate today that we have going on it's a hot topic, HR, and everything from all of the sexual harassment charges and everything that's just kind of coming to the top. We are experiencing dentists now finding out, okay, I really need to make sure I've got my things in order here. Policy manuals are more critical than ever now. You know, everyone likes to be treated fairly and to make sure that everything that's going on in the practice, that everybody's on the same playing field. So policy manuals really help the dentist kind of take one thing off of their plate that they have to worry about. If they have manuals in place that cover how things are going to be handled, that can alleviate some of the stress. So we're really trying to hone in and make sure the dentists and the doctors out there have their policy manuals where they should be and make sure they're compliant.
Sure. Adrienne, I've obviously been in a lot of dental practices too, and I hear from doctors sometimes relative to the policy manual that they will buy a manual that is, I'll say, almost like a pre-formulated cookbook.
Yeah.
And it makes me a little bit nervous because how could a policy that's pre-written be applicable to every single practice? I'd like your opinion.
Yeah, and that's a very crucial point to that, because it's not one size fits all. Now, there are things that every single policy manual needs to have in it, whether it be a federal rule or a particular state law that wherever they're living. So there are things that need to go in there and that everyone is required to have. But then it depends on the number of employees that they have. There are laws that they need to have in there regarding their employee threshold. So, and they can customize it to put things in there that apply to them if they want to add extra things other than what is state or federally mandated. So, but they need to have policies such as, okay, what are they going to do for holiday pay? Now, that's not something that is required by a state or a federal law, but everybody wants to know, am I going to get paid for July 4th? So putting things like that in there so the dentist really doesn't have to shoot from the hip every time something comes up. He learns a sentence with 5 magic words. Go look in the manual.
Sure.
Everything's covered. He doesn't have to think, or she doesn't have to think, oh, well, what did we do last year about that? It's in the manual. Everybody knows how it's going to be handled, and there's no second guessing about it.
In the manual, that would that include or not include position descriptions and some of those details, or is that more individualized?
Yeah, that's more individualized, but that brings up another really good point, is having job descriptions so that everybody knows what's expected of them. The job descriptions come in to play into a lot of different instances, from just the hiring, the recruiting and the hiring process, so that when you've got someone sitting across the desk from you that you're interviewing, you hand them the job description so they know, okay, this is what is expected. And then when you do performance management, using that job description as a tool to set future goals for the employees. So they come in at this level, and then what do they want to do in the next year? What do you want them to be able to do in the next year? So the job description comes into play in a lot of different facets.
I'm glad you brought up performance management. Again, my experience has been the doctor has the entire team reporting to him or her, and when I think of performance review or performance management, I'm thinking that they should have some regular sit-down meeting where they're reviewing performance and maybe some type of a metric of performance or rubric of some sort. Do you have any guidance on that, or how a performance review might look? Because I feel like it's not that they aren't doing them unless they just simply don't know that they're supposed to be doing something like this. Or maybe you can elaborate.
Well, we run into a lot. We'll ask dentists, well, are you doing performance reviews? And some of them will go, yeah, and then we go, are you doing them consistently? Well, then the hands kind of go down, and we say, well, why not? And they say, well, I don't know how, or my staff have been with me forever and they all know that they're doing a great job and I just don't do it. Or the one that I really love is, well, somebody always ends up crying, so I just avoid it like the plague.
Sure.
But everybody likes feedback, and the key to performance management is it is an ongoing process.
Sure.
Yes, we do recommend that you have sit-down meetings on a regular basis with each staff person to talk about goals. The past is done, so there's not a lot that you can do about the past, but you set goals and have the employee in on the goal setting process.
How frequently would you suggest there be a performance conversation that's a little bit more formalized?
At least annually.
Yeah.
Because looking at what has happened in the practice and then where you want to go with that. So we recommend at least on an annual basis, but we have some clients and we see some offices that do it on a quarterly basis. And it's not a big, scary deal where you go into the office and the doctor opens this secret folder and brings out all these things. Well, 6 months ago you did this, this, and this. That's not what performance management is about. So having that one-on-one time with your employees to talk about the future and to talk about ways to improve the practice, improve patient care, it's really a big deal.
Are there any tips you could give our viewers about maybe the 2 or 3 things that would be really critical to review in that performance review that are universal to all position types? Maybe?
Yeah, we like to advise doctors to have the employee review themselves. Have them fill out some type of a review form so that you know what they're thinking. And then you can share that information, and talk about maybe the employee has a different perspective than the dentist does, and talk about that. Talk about ways that maybe there's more training that could be given, and really focus on future performance and what can be done to better serve the patient and for the employee to improve.
Sure. When in your experience, when there's strife or challenge in that office, kind of the next part of performance management is if they're not performing. What recourse do doctors have? Because it seems often there's some fear and concern about, well, what will happen if I lose this person who's producing, even though they're disruptive to the practice, or maybe they just don't get along with other people. What can you give us for guidance on
Well, first of all, we say document. You have to have a document trail of everything. Every time you speak to the employee about a performance issue, you need to document it and make sure that you've got the paper trail and all the documentation. And sitting down with the employee to talk about the performance can always be kind of a nerve-wracking venture for the doctors, but just understand that you're there to better your employees. Your employees hopefully are there to better your practice and to take care of your patients. So documentation, and then just continuing the improvement process. It really is, you develop the culture, and either it's a culture that you want to learn and grow together, or it's not. There's not a...
That's just a perfect segue to this next question relative to consequences. So consequences to the doctor, aside from losing productive staff members, what else do you see in way of consequences for failed policy or absent policy, or what else do you see out there in the world?
Well, if If the doctor does not have an established policy, they're out there just kind of floundering, and that's where they're really going to get into trouble. If they have a circumstance happen one time and then they treat it one way, and then it happens again and they treat it a different way. There's a lot of discrimination issues that can arise out of that. Right now, the break point for age discrimination is 40 years old. So especially if a doctor is looking to terminate an employee and he or she is over 40, they need to be very careful because that is a protected class.
Wow.
So, walking through that can be tricky to navigate through. What we really encourage the doctors to do, like I said, is to document everything that they're doing and talking about. But when it comes to terminations, that's where they have to really, really make sure that they have things in order before they do that.
Obviously, there's great range in terms of size and scope of these businesses that we work with. Can you speak to how policy or law might be similar or different as the size of the business changes?
Yes. Now, when you get to companies such as Google and Microsoft and these very large companies, obviously they're going to have way more than 50 employees on their payroll.
Sure.
So they are in kind of a separate category. But there are employee thresholds for even 5 employees. There are certain things that you're required to do. And then you get up to 7, 10, 15, and then it just keeps adding on layer to layer of laws that the dentists have to know and have to abide by. The trick to all that is the dentists don't get this in their dental curricula.
Of course.
So it's something that they're having to learn almost baptism by fire. But there are certain thresholds where they have to do more and abide under more strict laws than ever. So that's where we try to come in and make sure that they know, okay, if I have 5 employees, then this law doesn't really pertain to me. But when I get up to 10, I need to be aware of this. So there are things like the breastfeeding law that was enacted in about 2010. Every employer has to abide by that. It doesn't matter if you have 1 or 1,001 employers. You have to abide by that. So there are definitely laws out there and employee thresholds out there that they need to be aware of.
Sure. Adrienne, it's been such a delight to spend some time with you this morning.
You too, Eric.
I will say every time we spend time together, I learn something new, and you've been such a tremendous resource to our company and to our viewers, certainly. So I appreciate you. If you want to see other Scheinchats, you can visit us at henryschein.com/Scheinchats, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.